Hello students, how are you all? I hope you all are doing good. Right, I am Santoshi Neeraja. I am passionate about teaching. See, most of the students are failing, like they are failed to reach their goals because they don't know the concept in a well manner. Because of that reason, the students are failed to reach their goals. So, I want to explain, like I started this YouTube channel in order to explain the concept in a better way so that the child understand and write the answers to the questions, able to write the answers to the questions which can be asked in any manner. So, before going to the class, please subscribe to Easy Science YouTube channel, and in the corner of the right hand side you have a bell icon. Click that, and like all categories, you click the bell icon for all categories so that you will never miss an update from my channel. Students, I'll post video on every day. Please subscribe to Easy Science YouTube channel. Right. Today our class is the diversity in the living world. So today we'll know about the secrets of the diversity in the living world. Right, let's move to our class today, the diversity in the living world. Right, okay, right. So you know what is biology? Biology is nothing but the science of the studying living organisms. Not only living organisms, even their life processes also. In biology, we study about living organisms and their life processes. See, this living world has an amazing diversity, right? See, no two organisms do not have all the characters similar. There are different diversities and they are amazing, and scientists are very much interested to know about the diversities and similarities that arise between the organisms, right? And not only differences, the living organisms will show similarities. The similarities may be horizontally and vertically. That means organisms can show similarities between the organisms which are alive and the organisms which are lived in the past. They'll show similarities in between the living organisms in both the cases, which are currently alive and even the organisms which are lived in the past. Right. Now, there is a question that what is the life? What is life? In this question only we have two questions, that what is living, and the second one is what is the purpose of living, why we came on to the earth, what is our purpose on this world. Right, scientifically, that means biologically, we can't give the answer for second question, what is the purpose of our life, but we can say what is living. Right, and in your lower classes or in previous classes you have studied about, there are some terms and conditions to say which is a living organisms and which is are which are called as non-living. Right, so from childhood onwards we have some examples which show this is a living organism, this is a non-living organism. So let's discuss about that parameters which describe the living organisms. Right, no, you know that the characteristics on what basis we say that an organism is living means depending on growth, reproduction, metabolism, cellular organization, and its ability to sense the environment and produce a suitable response. So all these are considered as the characteristics of the living organisms. Right, so we all know from our childhood onwards, these are the characteristics of living organisms. Let us discuss in detail each of the characteristics of the living organism. Right. The first one is growth. So biologically or scientifically, growth means in two ways. Right. The increase in the mass and increase in number also. The number of the cells, every organism, living organism starts its life with a single cell, right? So cell divides and give rise to two cells. That means the number of cells will increase by cell division, and even mass also increase. Both are referred to as growth. In case of the plants, the division occurs, like growth occurs throughout the life, but in case of the animals and human beings, they'll grow only to certain period of time. It's not lifelong. Growth will never be lifelong. Only a like particular period will grow for a particular period. After that we'll stop our growth. But whenever there is an injury and there is a loss of tissue, at that place division occurs, that is growth occurs, right? And unicellular, in case of the unicellular organisms, they grow by cell division. See, in case of the unicellular organism, you can't find a difference between the reproduction and cell division. For example, in case of the amoeba reproduce by binary fission, that is, the single cell divides into two daughter cells, which is an example of growth, right? So unicellular, that means lower organisms, we cannot find the differences between growth and reproduction. But in case of the higher plants and animals, they are mutually exclusive events. Growth and reproduction are, they are different, like exclusive events of a living organism, right? So if we take growth as a criteria of a living organism, even non-living organisms also show growth. Like mass increase in the mass is considered as growth for a living, like is a characteristic of a living organism. See, we say that growth in two terms, like increase in mass and increase in number of cells, both are considered as growth. If increase in mass is considered as the characteristic of growth, means it is a characteristic of growth, means even the non-living organisms also grow. How? Means example, mountains, sand mounds, boulders, they also grow due to the deposition on their surface. But here the growth is on the surface, but in case of the living organisms, the growth is internal. They grow from internally, right? But there are some exceptions for growth, that is some non-living organisms also growing, like increasing their masses due to their deposition. This is an exception. So growth, due to this exception, there are some few exceptions. So due to these exceptions, growth cannot be taken as a defining character for a living organisms. Only some we have to, if growth is taken as a characteristic for living organisms, you have to explain some terms, like for example, mountains are growing, that is only deposition, occurs only on the surface. This is, you have to explain that. See, you have to explain some terms, then only you can consider growth is the characteristic of a living organism. That's why it's not as a defining, like we can't take growth as a defining material for living organisms. The next one we have is reproduction. You know, reproduction means what? Organisms give rise to their young ones, right? Produce their offsprings. By reproduction, organisms can reproduce both sexually and asexually. In case of the sexual reproduction, both the parents will involve, and in case of asexual reproduction, only one parent will involve, right? And we have different modes of reproduction, like I have given here some examples, that fungi reproduce through spores, and eastern hydra budding, planarians regeneration, that is like some part of the organism has get separated from the parent cell and it continue as a new individual. This phenomena we called it as regeneration. And you know, amoeba reproduce by binary fission, right, which we also call that as cell division. So these are some of the examples of asexual mode of reproduction. And maybe, like whatever may be the reproduction, whether it is a sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction, it finally give rise to its offsprings. By reproduction, organisms regenerate, that is produce their offsprings. So we are very much clear in usage of both the terms growth and reproduction. reproduction means giving rise to their offsprings. Growth means increase in number or mass, right? But there are some exceptions for reproduction also. What are the exceptions that we can take for reproduction means, see, there are some organisms which cannot reproduce throughout their life, right? What are they means? It is mule. Mules do not reproduce throughout their life. Mules, it's a crossing over between a female horse and a male donkey. Artificial fertilization takes place, which give rise to the mule, which do not have the capacity of reproducing. Even honeybee colonies also, we have sterile worker bees. Worker bees, they collect nectar. Their function is just to collect nectar. They can't reproduce throughout their life. Only queen bees can able to lay the eggs. Remaining these cannot do that. Sterile worker bees which cannot reproduce. Even in human beings also, some of the human beings cannot able to give rise to their offsprings. They are sterile. They don't have the capacity of producing their offsprings. Even still they are living. So even reproduction is also not taken as a characteristic of living beings, because some of the living beings are not able to reproduce. So whenever there are some exceptions, we can't take that it is the characteristic, right? So both growth and reproduction cannot be taken as a criteria to explain the organism as a living thing, right? Next one, metabolism. See, our body is made up of different types of chemicals. Every time new chemicals are producing, and they were converted into different forms in our molecules, sorry, in our body, they are converted into different biomolecules. They were forming and converted into different biomolecules inside our body, right? There are several metabolic reactions that was taking place in our body. For example, during the process of digestion, breakdown of complex substances into simple substances takes place, which is an example of metabolic reaction. And during respiration, glucose is breakdown in the presence of oxygen to give rise to carbon dioxide and oxygen, which is a metabolic reaction. In plants, continuously the inorganic molecules, like inorganic substances like carbon dioxide and hydrogen, give rise to complex organic molecules, again which is an example of metabolism. So a lot of metabolic reactions takes place inside our body. So the total chemical reactions that are takes place inside our body is termed as metabolism. Metabolism is the characteristic of a living organism, because no non-living object exhibit metabolism. No exceptions. Here, metabolism, in case of metabolism, there are no exceptions. Only the living things will show the metabolism, right? Chemical reactions can be shown only by the living organisms. So even the metabolism, even the cellular organization also, like cellular organization, group of cells give rise to tissues, group of tissues give rise to organs, group of organs give rise to organ systems. This differentiation, organization is not seen in non-living things. That's why both metabolism and cellular organization are taken as the defining features of the living organisms without an exception. Underline, without an exception, right? The next one is ability of the living organisms, right? So to show response to the changes that occur in our surroundings. See, this is an exclusive phenomena that takes place inside the living organisms. It's an exclusive phenomena which takes place only inside the living organisms, and the response may be physical, chemical, and biological also. See, we can give examples also. Physical changes, what will show about, like through our surroundings, is physical changes we can show, right? See, whenever there are some changes in the surroundings, we respond to that, we show some response to that changes, and that response may be in the form of physical chemical and biological. Physical changes, like when you are walking on the road, when if you hear a horn, car horn, you move aside, which is a physical change which occurs by your legs. Chemical change, when you think of about lemon or tamarind, saliva secreted inside your mouth, which is a chemical change. Biological change, we are growing, right, reaching to the adolescent stage. After that we reach to the reproductive stage. Three stages of life we are showing, which is an example of the growth. So all these comes under biological responses. So the living organisms can show response to the changes in the surroundings in three means: physical, chemical and biological. So we sense our environment through our sense organs, like we have five sense organs, right? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin, and we can sense our environment with the help of this sense organs, right? Even plants also responds to the external factors like temperature, right, light, humidity, water, other organisms and even pollutants also they can respond. And we can give some examples of this response to the changes in the environment. The best example is photo period will affect the reproduction in seasonal breeders. You know, seasonal breeders, like in reproduction we discussed this: breeding, seasonal breeders and continuous breeders. Seasonal breeders means which show reproduction only at a particular period. Throughout the year they can't reproduce. See, reproductive stage will be there. Throughout the reproductive stage they can't reproduce, only a certain period of time. Such organisms we termed as seasonal breeders, and organisms which reproduce continuously throughout the reproductive period are termed as continuous breeders. Generally seasonal breeders are present on natural environment, right? And photo period, what do you mean by photo period? Photo period is defined as the period of time a living organism was exposed to light, and this photo period will affect the reproduction in case of the seasonal breeders. Photo period will affect the production of melatonin by the pineal gland. Melatonin is a hormone which affects the, like which produces the changes in the sleep and awake cycle, right? So, photo period affects the production of melatonin, which in turn affects the sleep awake cycle, which in turn affects the reproduction in case of the seasonal breeders. Right. So, there are lot of changes we will show according to our environment. See, one more best example also we can give for this like changes. See, I'll give you a best example that when you when you move to a place where there is a bright light condition, right? So you started seeing the surroundings by closing your eyes half like this, right? And when you enter a room, the room will be like it's like totally dark, which is a change you are showing about your surroundings. When you are in bright light condition, you are automatically the eyes size of the eyes have decreased and you started seeing like this, which is a change that was according to our environment depending upon the light. So there are, we can give several examples that we show changes according to that we show response to the changes in the environment. And human beings exclusively the only organism which have the self consciousness, right? And see, tissues have some properties and they were not present in the cells. The properties of the tissues, you know what is a tissue? Group of cells is termed as tissue, and properties of tissues are not present inside the cell. They arise, properties will arise as a result of the interaction between the cells. Similarly, the properties of cell organelles, we say a different properties like mitochondria necessary for cellular respiration, ribosomes protein production, like particular function we are saying. The properties of the cell organelles are also not present in the molecular constituents of the organelles, but they arise due to the interactions between the molecular components. Therefore, we can say that based on all these characteristics, we can say that living organisms are self-replicating, evolving. What do you mean by evolving? See, we always produce some changes in our body according to our environment. Why we have to show changes according to the environment means to suit better to this environment, to grow in this environment, like in a proper way, in a better way. We show some changes that we called it as evolution. Evolution gives the organism to live in a better way in this environment, and we are self-regulating. Organisms can self-regulate themselves because they are some systems, interactive systems are there inside the bodies of the living organisms. See how living organisms all can do this, like replication, evolution, regulation. How we can do this means there are some interactive systems inside the bodies of the living organisms which are capable of responding to the external stimuli, right? So throughout the world the number of species are 1.7 to 1.8 million. Different number of species are present on the earth, and this different biological organisms is termed as biodiversity. See, biodiversity is referred to as the number of organisms present on this earth is termed as biodiversity, right? Right. On exploring new areas, we find old ones and even new organisms also. Like if you go to a new place, you can find the old organism like which is already exist, and you may find a new organism also. Like we are living it at this place, and if you go to a forest, like you can find more creatures which you did not see like in your lifetime. That means you are continuously identifying the new organisms like in our environment. See, even plants and animals. See, the plants and animals which are growing in our area, we call them with our names in that area. Those names we called it as local names. For example, if we take potato have different local names, and local names vary from one place to other place. Like potato, if you take, somebody will call it as aloo, and some people will call it as Bengal dumpa, right? So different local names are there, and they vary from one place to another place, right? I was talking about potato and you also talking about potato, but you are using the local name of that substance and I am using my local name, and we both are conversing, like there is a conversation between us about the same thing, but we don't know that is the same thing because we are expressing it with different names, which creates a lot of confusion, right? So to avoid this or to remove this confusion, every living organism has a specific name which can be identified or which can be accepted throughout the world. And this process of naming of living organism is termed as nomenclature, right? So nomenclature, how naming takes place means only name of the organism for that living thing will give name only after describing the living thing in a correct way, right? See, I can't bring the dog and I can't call it as a cat, isn't it, students? Like I have shown you a dog and I am calling it as a cat because I am saying that that's my local name. I can't do that, right? It's totally we can't do like that, right? So naming can be done only after proper identification. How can you identify? By describing, right? So only after describing the living thing only we can name the organism, and the process of describing the organism is known as identification. After identification only we provide a proper name to the living thing, right? And for naming the plants, it is based on the principles and criteria provided by ICBN. It's International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. And for naming animals, we follow the principles and criteria that was provided by ICZN. It's International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. Right. And scientific name which can be accepted worldwide, and the scientific name ensures what it will ensure to a living organism is each organism has only one name which will be accepted worldwide, and that name description of any organism should enable the people to arrive at the same name. See, I said Mangifera indica. This is the scientific name of the mango. I have to describe this. See, scientific names I said, and I have to describe. It is a very long tree and it gives you fruits. Some are like very sweet to taste. If I describe the scientific name, I have given one scientific name and I started describing the living thing, so that the opposite person who is hearing my identification, like my description, has come to a conclusion that what I am describing about. Such characters we will take for naming the organism. And it also ensure that the name which has taken for one living organism cannot be used by any other organism, known organism, right? So every scientific name has two components. The first name we called it as genus name, and the second name we call it as species name. Providing scientific name with two components. Always all the living organisms were proposed by, named by two components, and this process of providing two names to the living organism is termed as binomial nomenclature, because we are giving two names, that's why it is called as binomial nomenclature. And this was given by Carl Linnaeus, and he is known as father of taxonomy. Carl Linnaeus is considered as father of taxonomy. See, he named 4,400 animal species and 7,700 plant species also, right? And he classified the names of the living things in his book Systema Naturae, and what he proposed was accepted worldwide, and it's very convenient for naming, right? So let's see an example. Mangifera indica. Like, there are some rules for naming the living thing, right? Just find out the rules to write the names. Mangifera indica is the scientific name of mango, right? So the scientific name of every living organism should come from Latin only. The words we have to take from Latin only. That's why Latin names means they have to written in italics only, right? The first letter, like the first component, is termed as genus, and this is known as genus, and the second component indicates the species, right? So if I have handwritten, like I have written the scientific name by hand, then it should be underlined separately, and if it is a printed word, it should be printed in italics. What is the reason why the scientific name should be printed in italics? Means showing that the italics, if you write in italics, it shows that the word is derived from Latin, right? That's the reason it should always be printed in italics. And if you like, if you are writing the scientific name with your hand, that is handwritten, means the genus and the species name has to be underlined separately. The genus name always should start with a capital letter, and the species name always should start with a small letter. It's a rule, right? Next, the name of the author can be written. See, if you want to write the name of the author also, you can write after the species name in an abbreviation form. Lin stands for Linnaeus, right? So this is the basic rules which we follow while naming a living thing, right? Right, right. If you go to a supermarket, what do you observe? Like if you go to a supermarket, what do you observe? We observe that they were arranged, right? All pulses at one side, all soaps at one side, all shampoos at one side, right? It was arranged, right? The supermarket person have grouped into categories. Whatever substances he has, he grouped into categories based on the easily observable characters. Based on the easily observable characters, he grouped the things which have into categories. All the pulses in one category, and all the shampoos in one category, all the soaps in one category, right? He categorized. How he grouped them? Based on the observable characters, he grouped them and divides into category. And this process of dividing or grouping anything into a category based on the easily observable character, that is which are appear, like which you can show with your eyes, is termed as classification. Classification, he classified. The supermarket person has classified. Classification means what? Grouped the things, whatever things he have, he grouped them into categories. This grouping of the things into categories based on the observable characters is termed as classification. Scientifically, the category, each category, for example, pulse is a category. Pulses are one category. Soaps are one category. Shampoos are one category. Each category has given a special name scientifically, which we called it as taxa, right? So based on the, even not only they are non-living things, he categorized, even non like living things are also categorized based on the characteristics, which we called it as classification. And each category is termed as taxa. Living things also, living organisms also classified based on the characteristics. Every character was grouped into a taxa. Categories is known as taxa. Even living organisms also classified. And this process of classification, how we classified? Based on the characters. We have categorized. Each category we called it as taxa. This process of classification of living organisms based on taxa is known as taxonomy. Taxa is nothing but a category. How you have grouped them into a category? Depending upon the characters, right? So this process we called it as taxonomy. So how the organisms, like living organisms, are categorized, how they make into one taxa. Each category scientifically we called it as taxa. How organisms are grouped into a taxa means that will be dependent on external structure, internal structure, cell structure, developmental process, and ecological information. These all together will form the basis for taxonomic studies, right? So taxonomy, what are the basic processes involved in taxonomy means, one is characterization. That means whatever observable characters are there, first we will observe and we will characterize them. Then later we will identify them. After that we will identify. After identification we will classify them. After classification we name them, that we called it as nomenclature. So all together this process we called it as taxonomy: characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature, right? So human beings are very much interested to know about different kinds of organisms, not only different kinds of organisms and the relationship between them. See, every organism has related to another organism. So human beings are very much interested to study about the organisms and the relationship that exist between them, right? Knowing different kinds of organisms and the relationship between them is termed as, that has scientifically called as systematics. It's a Latin word. Systematics has obtained from a Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of organisms. Not only, see, human beings are not only interested to know the relationship between the living organisms, but also the evolutionary relationship between the organisms, right? So this is an example where some names, like botanical names and scientific names I have given. In case of the plants, we call them as botanical names, and in case of the animals, we called it as zoological names. Together we called it as scientific names. Pea plant scientific name is Pisum sativum, onion plant Allium cepa, mango plant Mangifera indica, wheat plant Triticum aestivum, banyan tree it is Ficus bengalensis, and soya bean it is Glycine max. And in case of animals, it is frog Rana hexadactyla, cat Felis domestica, dog Canis familiaris, housefly familiaris, and its housefly Musca domestica, and cobra Nasa nasa, common crab its fish Cyprinus carpio, right? So if you observe that the first name always should start with a capital letter and second name should start with a small letter. So this is a capital letter and this is a small letter. Capital letter, small letter. And if you have handwritten, they should be underlined separately. And one more thing here, cobra, its scientific name is Nasa nasa, where the genus name and species names are same. Such names we called it as tautonyms. Tautonyms. Such names we called it as tautonyms. Both genus and species names are same, right? Because the species is the type of the genus, right? So this is about the diversity in the living world. Part 1 we discussed. In the next class, and that means tomorrow, we'll discuss the second part also, right? So please subscribe to Easy Science YouTube channel, and at the right corner you have a bell icon, right? Click the bell icon so that you will never miss an update from my channel. And please like, share, subscribe Easy Science YouTube channel. And how do you feel about the lesson? Please comment in the comment section so that I am able to know that you understand or not.